It's time for another WrestlePlanet news update, as WWE are said to no longer be interested in independent wrestlers, Adam Cole is said to be done with WWE, and Bryan Danielson is set to debut at AEW All Out. All that and more coming up in today's video, but first... According to the Wrestling Observer, this week's episode of AEW Dynamite saw a number of changes, this on top of the cancelled Gangrel appearance that we discussed in our last video. There is said to have been a match cancelled due to 2 people in the match testing positive for COVID, although neither had symptoms and both are fully vaccinated. Also, Matt Lee of 2.0 was given the week off due to his wife giving birth, which also caused some things to be moved around. In regards to the Gangrel story, despite him being pulled from the show following Edge using elements of the Brood gimmick on SmackDown and at SummerSlam, he was still paid as if he was on the show, which is a nice gesture from Tony Khan. Many fans have complained that this week's show was a little on the light side, and it seems there was more originally planned than what we actually got to see in the final product. AEW are said to be finding a new home for AEW Dark, with Tony Khan confirming this in June. The upcoming changes will see Dark Elevation taped before Dynamite, this instead of Dark, with Rampage being filmed after Dynamite. Dark Elevation will also be shortened in length. Sometimes Rampage will air live on Fridays for things like pay-per-view go-home shows and other special editions. In regards to the new location of Dark going forwards, Andrew Zarian of the Mat Men podcast is reporting that the tapings will be held from Universal Studios in Orlando, Florida, at a similar soundstage to what TNA/Impact Wrestling used to use. The shows will also be open to the public of those visiting the park. Not only did TNA film inside Universal Studios, but WCW used the location for various shows during their time in the 90s. Next week's Dark will be taped during the All Out week in Chicago, with the move expected to happen the week after. In yesterday's video, we discussed some interesting takeaways from Tony Khan's interview on Le Batard and Friends podcast, where he discussed Vince McMahon, CM Punk's AEW debut, and much more. Another topic of conversation was WCW, who was WWE's main rival through the bulk of the 90s. Whilst we are getting close to this level of competition now that AEW is here, they still have some way to go to reach the levels of WCW's peak. However, in the interview, Tony discussed some of the important differences between WCW and AEW, differences that can stop AEW suffering the same fate as Atlanta. Khan said, "My predecessor in many ways. We ran the companies very differently, but the last time anybody sat in my seat and was really successful competing with WWE was my friend Eric Bischoff, who was the president of WCW. Now, we had very different lives and different roles in some ways, but Eric faced different challenges, and what he did is so impressive, and it's different because he took over a company that already existed, WCW. Whilst Eric played a big part in WCW's initial boom in '96, unlike Khan, he had to answer to Time Warner executives and individuals that looked down on the wrestling business. This is hugely different from Tony Khan's position, who is the ultimate boss of the company." He added, "He didn't own it, but he ran it day to day, and he answered to Ted Turner, and Ted Turner was not a hands-on boss. And with all due respect and seriously, Ted Turner is one of the most important people in the history of the wrestling business. Part of my business plan, when I launched this, going to the president of TNT and TBS and going into the offices with all their executives, was I told them, if Ted had been 1% as hands-on or capable as I am to run a wrestling business, WCW never would have gone out of business." Whilst many uninitiated folk like to blame WCW's bad booking for its demise, and boy was it bad towards the end, but what really killed the company was the fact that everyone in Time Warner hated wrestling and didn't want it to be part of their portfolio. The only person who wanted WCW was Ted Turner, who was the owner of Time Warner at the time, and after he was removed from his role after the AOL-TBS merger, it was only a matter of time before the company was sold. Unfortunately, it was sold to the McMahons, killing WWE's only real competition at the time. It's now took us 20 years to even get close to that level of competition again. However, this situation is completely unlike AEW, who is solely owned by the Khan family. Next, we have an update from the Wrestling Observer newsletter regarding a switch in WWE's hiring policy, with them said to no longer be scouting independent wrestlers. Dave Meltzer noted that multiple sources from the top of the company have said that WWE will now be going back to signing people based on looks, rather than because they got over elsewhere. It was also said that he was told AEW can have all the independent talent to itself. It seems that Vince McMahon's unhappiness with the NXT system not producing talent that he likes has caused him to do a complete U-turn, returning to the old style of developmental philosophy used before NXT turned into a super indie. With AEW and WWE heading in two completely different directions, not only philosophically but creatively, it's going to be interesting to see the two completely different products become even more different. And quickly, just before we continue, make sure you drop a like on the video as it helps me out a lot, and make sure you subscribe with notifications turned on so you don't miss any upcoming wrestling content as we head, hopefully, towards 100,000 subscribers. But now, let's press play on the video. Over the past few weeks, there has been a lot of speculation surrounding former Undisputed Era leader Adam Cole, with his WWE contract having expired just yesterday. Cole's deal was originally set to expire last month, but he signed a short extension to see him through to NXT TakeOver 36, where he lost to former stablemate Kyle O'Reilly this past Sunday. According to PW Insider, the former NXT champion is considered done with the company, according to those within the company, that is unless a new deal can be agreed. Cole has a ton of options available, with the two most enticing options being either a move to the WWE main roster, which has been offered to him, or a jump to AEW to join his friends in the Elite and his girlfriend Britt Baker. Cole did appear during a live stream just yesterday to promote WWE Mattel action figures, but his segment with Johnny Gargano was filmed several weeks ago, and this has absolutely no indication on his future. It should also be noted that he has removed any mention of WWE from his Twitter bio, and he also cancelled a scheduled live stream on his Twitch account, with him telling his fans, "Hey Chugs Army, I'm very sorry, but something has came up today and I won't be able to stream today. I really wish that I could, but I will keep you all posted on when the stream will be Saturday. Love you Chugs Army, and thanks for understanding as always." There is currently no word on why the stream was cancelled or what his final decision will be. There's no reason why he won't just take a break for a while, as there doesn't seem to be any rush to make a decision, and as always we will keep you updated should the situation change. Last month it was reported that Bryan Danielson, known to WWE fans as Daniel Bryan, has signed for AEW. This broke shortly after the news that CM Punk had signed for the company. Bryan's debut was originally set for the Grand Slam edition of AEW Dynamite on September 22nd, which will air live from the Arthur Ashe Stadium in Queens, New York. The show will be AEW's first in a stadium and is set to break AEW's attendance record, which was set at AEW Rampage The First Dance in the United Center. It was now being confirmed by Cassidy Haynes of Bodyslam.net, who originally broke the Bryan story, that Bryan's first appearance has now been pushed forward several weeks due to growing internal concerns in regard to the pandemic, with rising cases in New York with continually tightening restrictions. The debut is now set to take place next weekend at the AEW All Out pay-per-view on September 5th in Chicago at the Now Arena, and this is said to be a lock. This follows a tease from CM Punk this week on Dynamite, who told fans that they need to be patient, this whilst they were doing the famous yes chant. Haynes added that he had heard rumours of the scheduling change a couple of weeks ago, but at the time was unable to confirm it with multiple sources, but it now seems that he has been given this confirmation. This will be the first time that fans will have seen Bryan since his last match in WWE on April 30th, shortly following his appearance in the main event of WrestleMania. On that episode of the Blue Brand, Bryan lost to the WWE Universal Champion Roman Reigns, failing to win the belt and being banished from SmackDown in the process. This angle seemed to be setting up a return to Raw, with SmackDown specifically being mentioned as a place he could no longer appear, but his contract then expired on May 4th and he turned down any advances of a new deal. Bryan was said to have been keen for WWE to form a working relationship with New Japan Pro Wrestling, and when these talks fell through, so did his interest in staying with the company. He now joins AEW, who will allow him to work in Japan, and he is said to have been given similar money to what WWE offered him whilst working less dates. It seems that the next week is going to be interesting as more news breaks regarding this story, and much like the CM Punk build, we'll be bringing you all the latest and greatest Bryan Danielson news and rumours, so make sure you're subscribed with the notification bell turned on as we head towards the final countdown. And before you go, make sure you check out my video where I discuss the 10 hottest free agents in wrestling today.